Investors just didn't want a good idea, they wanted a viable business.
You're watching the Career Series powered by MTN. I'm Tallulah Doherty Adetona, and today I'm with Fade Ogunro, the beautiful Fade Ogunro, who is the CEO of Bookings Africa, which is an online talent provider based here in Lagos, Nigeria. Fade, lovely to see you today. You look so colourful.
Thank you. I actually chose this outfit specifically. I wanted it to be bright and memorable and lift my spirits, especially in the economic hardship that we're all facing in Nigeria right now. Something to lift our moods, even if it's just a colour.
Thank you. It works. It definitely works. So let's get straight into it. Let's talk about, Bookings Africa. How did you come up with the idea, and how has it been going from sort of the idea stage to growing it into the business that it is today?
All right. So Bookings Africa was an idea that was developed over a few years. Actually, it started off. I'd like to give you a bit of context. In my previous work life, I was the vice president and executive producer for Film Factory Productions. The company still exists. So it was a post-production company, and we specialized in TV commercials, music videos, documentaries, all across Africa. Now, obviously being in charge of the money as the executive producer, you're always thinking about how to increase your bottom line. And I realized that there's 3 stages of production: pre-production, production, and post-production. And every time I'd look at those 3 stages, I realized that pre-production was the most inefficient, it was the most expensive, the most arduous, and basically the most fragmented. Every time I needed to shoot a TV commercial, I'd hire 5 different model agencies to source the talent. I'd look for voiceover artists from all over the world. I'd look for videographers, photographers, and that whole process used to take weeks, if not months. And I then thought, in order to really increase the bottom line, I need to reduce the amount of time I spend on pre-production. And the only thing that I could think of that would actually be a solution to the problems that I selfishly faced as a producer was to automate the pre-production process. And I thought, if I could book a professional African anywhere across the continent as easily as I'd book a hotel, I could see their prices, I could see their work portfolio, I could see ratings and reviews. There's no haggling, book, compare, search, everything securely all on one platform. That surely would help reduce the pre-production time. And literally that was the birth of Bookings Africa. It was, I must admit, it was a bit of a selfish solution, but
turned out well.
Yeah, and in doing, because like I said, it took years of research. So initially it was that B2B kind of business model, but the more research I did, I realized that it could actually be a solution to help mitigate the high rate of unemployment across the continent, because majority of the work across Africa is actually informal work. There's some statistics that show about 85% of work is actually informal. Now, if we break that down into the creative space, that's also about 32%. So 32% of all informal work is actually in the creative space across Africa, and none of that has actually been disrupted through technology and innovation, and allow people search, compare, and book for creative African talent all at the tap of a button.
That's fantastic. Not to interrupt, but I want to ask about how you were able to get the word out there in terms of getting creatives to sign up, and because when people hear about these things, sometimes there's an element of, oh, this is too good to be true. If I sign up, will I get work? Will I get paid? There's all these doubts that sometimes people have, especially as Africans in Africa. So how are you able to sort of overcome that in terms of your marketing, growing awareness, letting people know about what you're doing, and also helping them to sign up for the platform?
So I think I'm uniquely positioned to actually attract the talent for a couple of reasons. One, I've also actually been a talent myself. I worked on radio, so having credible friends in the media industry was something that was quite easy for me to access. That's number one. Number two, I already had a database. I was a producer for over 10 years, so every year the production company would hire at least 1,000 models. So imagine the database that I had already built up, and I'd already paid all these talent across the continent. So just getting word of mouth out there, literally leveraging off of the database that I had already had access to as a producer was the key. Being a marketplace, it's always a chicken and an egg, which one comes first. So we needed to focus on the supply side, which is the talent, focus on the supply side and grow that. Now you got to remember, we launched December 2019, so literally 3 months before lockdown.
Yes.
So the whole of 2020, a lot of our marketing was just online and it was just focused on the supply side. The B2B, we then decided our business model for revenue generation will focus on B2B first, then B2B2C, and then B2C. Statistics always show that B2C is always going to be the highest cost of customer acquisition, and B2B is always going to be the cheapest. So we focused on the cheapest cost of clients, which was of client acquisition, B2B, whilst the marketing spend that we had was done on the supply side. However, we leveraged heavily on the database that we'd already generated, as well as referrals.
Fantastic. Well, you had a strategy, it seems. I think sometimes people have an idea and they're so excited about the idea, they just sort of go into it blindly. But I love the fact that it was, with Bookings Africa, it was sort of thoroughly researched, thoroughly planned, and I'm sure that's why it's grown to what it is today. So let's talk about challenges now, because you talked about all sort of the great sides of it, but we also want to know if there were any downsides or any stressful periods during the building of the business.
Every day's been stressful, Tallulah. Okay, so there's different stages of it. So prior to the business going live in December 2019, there was the frustrations of fundraising. Once again, I always like to say there's a chicken and egg, because I needed funds to kind of build an MVP, but then people didn't want to give me money until I built the MVP. So it was kind of like just trying to manage that quite efficiently so that I would have a product that I could showcase to a working product that I could showcase to investors. Because I realized that the more I pitched, I realized that investors just didn't want a good idea, they wanted a viable business. And in order to prove to them that it was a revenue generating business, as well as they wanted to experience the user experience itself, the UI UX, and just understand that flow of the automation that we offered, it was imperative that I built the MVP. So that was also quite frustrating, but luckily I was able to leverage off of a very, very close friend whose day-to-day job is actually building apps and websites.
Oh, lucky.
Yeah. So if not for him, Otoide, thank you very much. If not for him, I don't think I'd be where I am right now. So just having somebody who believed in the vision of the business from the onset, even down to the logo that we have right now, he was the person that designed that logo. So the birth and the growth of Bookings Africa would not be where it is without his support. So I didn't even have to pay him initially. I paid him as and when as I had it. So not everybody's that fortunate, but that's my specific story. So that was challenge number one, and then of course the fundraising. And then once you get the funds, I have to admit, that was the first time that I'd never even had a credit card. I don't like owing anybody anything. So the idea of now having close to $400,000 worth of somebody else's money.
Was it like lots of different investors, or was it just one investor? Because I know a lot of people in tech, when they're looking to raise money, they're not quite sure how to go about it and whether they should ask for the sum they need from one person or try and maybe get bits from different people. So not to go into too much detail, but just to have a general idea.
So I had my angel investor. That's number one, and he was the one that actually helped me finance the MVP and doing a lot of research and development. So that was my first investor. And then after I got the MVP was built, I then got 3 different offers from a venture capitalist, which is pretty good. I could pitch them against one another, really do a little bit of due diligence and find out what the value propositions that each was offering. And that's very important when you're getting any investor on board. Just don't get excited. As a young entrepreneur, you get excited that, I've gotten an offer, and you just want to sign away your life. Like, you really have to do a lot of due diligence on the investors, find out who they've invested in, what the exits that they've done, successful exits that they've done, speak to as many founders and CEOs of the companies that they currently invest in to understand what that relationship is like. Because when somebody's courting you, of course everybody's going to put their best foot forward.
It's like dating, isn't it?
Exactly.
Yeah.
And then when you've kind of gotten married to them, then you see that they're actually kind of crazy. So you want to really try and get to know the investors as much as possible before signing the term sheet. And once again, you don't even have to sign a term sheet if it's not favorable to you.
Yes.
So those are a lot of things that I had to learn along the way, because that corporate governance is not something that was my greatest strength, just simply because working for Google, all of that was already done for me, and running my business, or my other business with my brother, it was a bit more relaxed when it came to such corporate governance and compliance. So this was a completely new board game, when we had board of directors, there was the IC, so there was real compliance that I actually had to go back and learn and do a lot of courses, so I too could sit at that table knowledgeable. So those are some of the challenges that I also faced. And then when I got my second investor, which is a venture capitalist, the fear of, right, I've gotten 2 investors right now, close to $400,000 that I've raised, I cannot mess this up. And then 3 months later, Corona happened. So my business model became redundant overnight. And then the anxiety, there's mental health that happens. I was like, what am I gonna do? Is my business gonna close down? You didn't have to look at all the legalities. What happens if I'm not able to pay them back their money? Would I be sued? Would I have to claim I'm bankrupt? Would I have to do this? So there were a lot of things that, the legal aspects of it, as well as the compliance aspects of it and governance, were things that I really had to brush upon, so that I'm always speaking from a place of knowledge, and not allowing not like to get bullied, but to just get swayed by the suggestion of more experienced people at the table. So yeah, those are some of the challenges that I faced, and then having to really, I don't like the word pivot anymore, but really re-strategize and refinance and remodel the business in order to not only survive throughout Corona, but thrive once we've kind of flattened that COVID curve, to ensure we then positioned our business in a place for growth.
Okay. I love everything you said, but one of the things I love the most is the fact that you sort of educated yourself. You realized that there were certain gaps in your knowledge, and you took the time to go and fill those gaps so you could sit at the table in a more sort of powerful, more knowledgeable position. Because I feel sometimes when we read about entrepreneurs, it's almost like entrepreneurs are all-knowing, beings, and there's never a time, that you have to sort of like re-strategize or go back and retrain. So I'm so glad that you actually brought that up. Thank you, Fadi. This is such an enlightening conversation. Really enjoying it. Okay, so let's talk about, maintenance, because once you've, gotten off the ground, you got the funding, you started, you pivoted during and after COVID. How have you been able to sort of maintain the business in terms of staying ahead of your competition, in terms of being a leader, managing your staff, and just in terms of, sort of growing the brand?
My leadership style, I'd like to say, is quite, I'm quite assertive with my leadership style, but at the same time, I do like to build a company culture where people can always speak their mind, especially those that are in managerial positions. One of the core values that we have is you've got to be charismatic, authentic, resourceful, but always solution-minded. So that's CARS. Charismatic, authentic, resourceful, solution-minded, CARS. And that's the basis of even hiring anyone. And when my staff come with any problems, they know that they must bring at least 2 or 3 solutions to the table alongside the problems, otherwise I'm doing the job for them. So that's one of the traits that I try to ingrain in them, especially with the culture of the company. And in terms of just management, I think also because of the corporate governance, where I have a board meeting minimum of every quarter, there's a certain reporting style that I know that we have to deliver every month. And there's certain KPIs that I know that we also have to deliver. So it allows for fast iteration. If something's not going right, you cannot manage what you don't measure. So it's really part of my, my leadership style, and also my management style is to be quite granular with everything that we measure. So we can always make data-driven decisions. Yes, there's contextualized and there's localized nuances of things, but I love to rely on one technology and data as much as possible. So it's not, I tell my staff, sometimes it's not about what you feel and what you think. That's relevant sometimes, but it's about what you know based on what the data is showing. So let's start off there, and then if we need to do any further analysis based on context and thoughts and feelings and, just, I guess some people might have a predisposition to be able to test and predict what trends are going to occur in the industry, then yes, we can rely on that. But first of all, let the foundation of any suggestion or any decision that's made to grow the business, let it be data driven. So that's kind of like the foundation.
Yeah.
And like I said, I think the corporate governance is very important. Platform Capital, who are one of our investors, they have monthly reports, quarterly reports that we have to deliver. So that experience has kind of sharpened us to ensure that we're always looking at numbers, we're always looking at the competition, and I like to say, okay, yes, we can be described as a Fiverr or Upwork for Africa, but not quite at the same time, because we're the only platform that has a video call feature. Okay. And also, because we focus on creative talent, when you want your eyelashes done or you want your hair braided, you're not going to Upwork to find somebody physically close to you. Yeah. So we've localized it based on the services and the skill sets, the latent and professional skill sets that we know are available in Africa and in the markets we operate in. But we also try and make sure that's technology led as well. So that way, in the event where another, God forbid, Corona happens, another lockdown happens, people are still able to monetize their skill sets from the comfort of the home, just having a smart device and data or Wi-Fi.
That's fantastic. It's obviously you've thought about it in like a 360 way, which obviously is very beneficial to the company. So I love that. So let's talk about advice, because I'm sure a lot of people who are watching this are thinking, oh, I love the sound of Bookings Africa. I have an idea that's also in the tech space and I want to execute it, but I have no idea. I'm just a creative person who has ideas. Right? So how would that kind of person get into tech, and how would they be able to implement and monetize their own idea?
See, I think the business that people make is that they kind of put tech on a different pedestal to business. It's a business. First of all, learn how to run a business. So you need to know about financial modeling, you need to know about reporting, you need to know about people management. That's just the foundation of running a business. So just if you're a creative, but you're not able to just be business minded, you might have to figure out other ways to actually get your idea to life. Because if you're not good at people management, and it's not a one-stop shop where you just need to buy and sell online by managing an Instagram account or a social media account, then it might not be for you. Not everybody needs to be a CEO. You might have other strengths where you might want to get a co-founder who has these more business or financial mindset and strengths that they bring to the table, whilst you might just handle the creativity aspect of it. But if you are able to, someone that's able to merge both of these skill sets in terms of the creative and the structured business, then yeah, by all means go for it. So that's the first, is actually to identify your own strengths and weaknesses and be very true to yourself.
That can be hard to do, because I think sometimes we overestimate our strengths and underestimate our weaknesses. I've been in that boat, so yourself, I love it. And there's this whole narrative out there right now about women in tech and how we need more women in tech, and how women are grossly underrepresented, especially female African founders. What do you think about that, and how has it been for you being an African woman in the tech space?
When I first started trying to do a lot of research for Bookings Africa and just about tech, there really wasn't any known name for me to really, get some information from, such as like Odunayo. I don't even think PiggyVest had started then. So I didn't really have any resources, so I just do what I did best. Reached out to people globally, online, LinkedIn, and also I just leaned on social media and like YouTube, what I could learn that way. And then the moment I was able to identify some women, I made them my best friends. Like Inkem from Futuresoft, she is a wealth of knowledge. I followed Mrs. Omobola Johnson's career as well, and she's a Minister of Information and Technology. So I really liked to, even if it's from as far as possible, directly or indirectly, these are the sort of women that I try to lean on to see, okay, how could their career or some of the decisions that they've made, or how can I have access to them so that I could have them as my sounding board. So that happened maybe about quite recent. I'll probably say from 2020, I decided that I was going to be quite intentional about reaching out to more women in the tech space. However, sitting on the board of the Cherie Blair Foundation, and we're all about empowering women through technology as much as possible. We've done a lot of research, and the gender disparity actually is a form of, well, from low socioeconomic environments and economies, women always have a disadvantage when it comes to education and when it comes to income as well. And then STEM, which produces generally a lot of people to participate in the tech space, that's actually makes up less than 1% of the in Africa of people that study STEM, of women that study STEM in Africa in universities or in tertiary institutions. It's less than 1%, because culturally they're still seen as male dominated or male geared subjects. So until that mindset, we break that mindset, that's when we'll really see an increase and an uptake in people participating in STEM. And it's kind of like, and then churning out more women to participate in tech. But once again, just with the influx and how quickly technology is being adopted across the continent, I think there are a lot of like non-technical jobs that are also being created, like product managers, for example. So there's a lot of courses that people can start doing to really participate. Because I remember when I first started hiring a product manager 3 years ago, there was literally maybe 1 in every 20 CVs was a woman. Now I'm hiring a product manager, it's like 1 in every 4 or 5 product managers. Exactly. So I'm starting to see that, especially in the non-technical roles, in technology, I'm seeing a lot more female participation, which is very encouraging. However, in the technical roles, there still needs to be a lot more encouragement and enablement, which is beyond just empowering.
Okay, I love that. But do you think that tech is still a bit of a boys' club? Because it has this, there's this notion, you think of Silicon Valley, you think of the Mark Zuckerbergs and Jeff Bezoses, and yes, there are some women, there's Sheryl Sandberg and there's other prominent females in tech, but it just seems like it's 90% a boys' club. Have you felt that when you've been in certain rooms or certain circles?
Absolutely. When I was first pitching to raise money, I could literally count how many accelerator programs that I'd go to and I was the only woman, or how many people that I'd pitch to and I was the only woman. So even by way of investors themselves, there weren't a lot of women participation. I have seen it, but because of the way I grew up, and I have to say thanks to my parents, I'm so fortunate, they didn't really let me see gender divide at all. So I've always, I wouldn't necessarily say, okay, I'm an alpha woman. I'm just a woman because who really, I guess I've always been a feminist just by the way of my parents treating us as equals. So when you've always grown up thinking you're an equal and believing you're an equal, even if I'm in a room with 100 guys, 100 men, I don't see myself as less than, and I don't let myself get intimidated because I've always just seen I'm equal. So it's only later on somebody then calls out, you were the only woman in that room, and I'm like, oh, that's true. But I just see it as we're all humans. I've got an equal opportunity, even though statistically I don't. But my mindset doesn't hinder me from believing that I have an equal opportunities to everyone else. So yes, realistically, have I noticed it? Yes. But individually, in my mindset, do I let it affect me in any way? Absolutely not.
I love it. Well, thank you so much for making us to talk to us about your journey, and wishing you, lots more success. You've really come so far. I know that there's a whole lot of, runway to go. So thank you so much.
Definitely. Yes. Thank you for having me.